This video is for people who are going through a spiritual awakening and just might not know it. There are certain types of experiences that can happen to a person after they awaken that are very perplexing, highly unusual, sometimes even concerning. And without the awareness of what is connected to something very profound and beautiful and uplifting, it can very easily cause a person to go into concern and worry and just start to wonder if there's something going on with them, something wrong with them. Why are other people not discussing this? And all of this sort of confusion, it just comes from a lack of understanding. It is only recently that we have an entire planet full of people who are going through what was once an extremely rare experience, this spiritual awakening. Now we have millions and millions, maybe even billions of people all waking up, most of whom weren't aware that this is going to happen, weren't prepared for it, and are doing their best to reconcile some of these bizarre experiences with their daily life when it doesn't seem like everybody's going through it. You might feel like you're alone. Well, this video is to show you you're not alone, that some of the experiences you've been going through and having are very real and very positive. And when you understand them, you can have a very different experience of them. What comes to mind is a long time ago when I started going through my own awakening, I found that there a few times during the nighttime, I'd wake up and my entire body would be buzzing, like not violently, but very intense buzzing through my entire body. And it was a very, very, very big experience. And I thought, I didn't know, I don't remember what I thought, but it was like, I thought something was going on with me. And then I finally found out, I talked to this psychic, this local psychic who I would see once in a while. And he said, oh, that just means you're about to have an out of body experience. Those vibrations, it means you're about to go, about to go off. He did that. And I was like, oh, okay, huh. I didn't know if I believed it, but felt better in the moment. Well, the next time that happened, I remember what the psychic told me. I said, okay, let's do this. And I literally, for the first time in my life, consciously left my body. I literally felt myself emerging out of my body. And I looked down and sure enough, there I was laying in a bed, and I went off and floated around in this beautiful lucid dream. Just to highlight an example of how you could take something, and when you know what it means, what it represents, when you know that it's safe, that it's normal, you can have a radically different experience with it. Same with a lot of these things I'm going to be sharing with you in this video. That's my goal for you, is to start having fun with your awakening. Stop wasting time thinking you're crazy or something's wrong with you just because your coworkers aren't talking about this. Doesn't mean it's not real, doesn't mean it's not profound, doesn't mean it's not going to be extremely exciting for you once you get a handle on some of these things. So anyways, welcome to my channel, my friends. My name is Victor Oddo, and I've been helping people navigate their awakening by sharing my experience of myself and also my clients for the last 10 years on YouTube. And this video, again, is going to share with you experiences that only people have when they've already had a spiritual awakening. The first one is synchronicities. This is a term coined by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And I'll give an example straight from his autobiography of what a synchronicity is. Well, essentially what it is, I'll just tell you. It's something that happens where there's a union between what's going on inside of you and what happens in your external reality, demonstrating for you, at least in that moment, a very first-hand confirmation that there really is a connection. You're really not this isolated fragment in this environment. You are the environment. And after an awakening, you start having experiences that start to slowly kind of warm you up to that being a fact of nature, fact of life. And anyway, as an example, Carl Jung shared this cool story where he was working with a patient who, I forgot exactly, but he described her as someone who was like really in their head and had a very difficult time connecting with their body and things like that. And Carl Jung was really big on having people record their dreams. And people would have dreams, they'd write them down, they'd come in, they'd talk about them with him, and he would like help them interpret them and things like that. And anyway, this one day, this woman came in excited because she had this really interesting dream. And the dream was that she was given a gift by a gold cherub. A cherub, I'd look it up. A cherub is a beetle. This golden beetle, very specific like thing, gave her a gift, and it felt meaningful. And as she was telling the story to Carl Jung in the office, there was this knocking on the window. And guess what it was? It was a cherub beetle. In fact, he opened the window. He was able to somehow catch this bug, and he came in and he handed it to her. He said, "There's your gift." Now, what are the odds that a cherub beetle would bounce into this window on this particular day, let alone at the exact time she's talking about having a dream of a cherub beetle? That's synchronicity for you. It can come on slow. You may start seeing the numbers 1111 or other like standout numbers, 111, 333, 444, 555, 77, probably not on clocks, but 777, not on clocks. So you'll see them on license plates, you'll see them on billboards. Maybe you see 1111 on your, what I would do sometimes, I noticed it was 1111, and then I'd be listening to a song on my iPod, and it would, it sometimes shows you like where, it shows you like the duration of the song. And I've had it multiple times where I would look down and it was 11:11, and then I'd look down again and the song was hitting the 11:11 mark. It was literally going from 11:10 to 11:11. Like what are the chances? It's not like I'm staring at my phone trying to catch that. It'll happen always by accident. And then it happens. Now, science does attempt to sort of explain this away, and I think there's validity there. One of the things it talks about is how our brains will naturally start to become aware of patterns. Like we filter most input out. Right now, I'm talking to you, I got the camera. There's a lot of stuff in my room, a lot of stimuli that is not being processed by my brain. But when I become aware of 11:11, my brain, my subconscious is on the lookout for 11:11, so it'll seem like I'm seeing 11:11 more. But what I have found is that the cherub beetle story, how does that get explained? That to me is beyond that. It goes beyond rational explanation, and that's kind of what Carl Jung would say as well. He's like, yeah, certain things, if you like get a new car, you're going to start seeing that car more often. Yeah. But that's, even though that's similar, what he's describing is synchronicity. What the story he shared, the experiences you might be having is actually very different. And I think it's good not to just explain it away by science and to really allow it to kind of open up your mind to maybe that we don't know as much as we think we know about reality. Maybe we're not as evolved as we'd like to believe we are human beings, and there's so much more mystery to the world, to earth, to yourself, to life itself. Allow the synchronicities, is my suggestion, to start to open your mind up to the possibility of magic. Just like I love the Marvel movies, and we just watched the first Thor movie. You might not be into Thor, but I like Thor, I like all of the Marvel movies. And Thor is like a god. He comes from this other like planet basically. And he's on Earth at the time, and he's talking to this scientist, and he's kind of explaining like the ways of his world. And she says, well, that sounds a lot like magic. He says, I come from a place where science and magic are the same thing. Another thing that happens is people start to have what Carl Jung would describe as an awakening of the second self. What he means by that, it's like there are two selves. He had a different name, actually. He would call it, there's a spirit of the times and the spirit of the depths. The spirit of the times is kind of like the conditioned personality construct, the persona, the ego. The spirit of the depths is like your soul, what he called the self. And after a spiritual awakening, they start to kind of converge. And essentially what happens is this second self, or the spirit of the depth, starts to demand more of you. It starts to make its presence and its will known to you. Almost like you feel sometimes compelled to do something that doesn't make a lot of sense. It conflicts with the ideologies of the spirit of the times. Like, for example, it happened to me a while back when I was running my personal training gym, which at the time was like the culmination of my life's work. Right out of high school, shortly after high school, I became a personal trainer, got certified, had a job. Then I started going to people's houses, and 10 years later, I had my own gym. I owned a gym, and I ran it. I had other employees, and it was successful. And right at the peak, I started to feel like there's something else I meant to do. It was the spirit of the depths was starting to say, like, even though this is cool, there's more. There's more to you. There's more to your story. And there's more to life that you have to experience. And it's time to go find out what that is. So my spirit of the depths was coming in, and it was giving me these strong feelings. I needed to move on. But my mind was saying, why would I do that? I'm good here. I'm secure. This is what I worked so hard for. What am I going to do? Spirit of the depths, you're offering me nothing. But eventually it became so compelling, so impossible to ignore that I eventually listened. And here I am, 300,000 followers later on YouTube. I would have never in a million years knew that I didn't know this is where I was being led. But imagine if I resisted that. You just don't know. You don't know where life can take you. I just got done reading this book by the lead singer of this band, actually, Maynard James Keenan. He's also the lead singer of other bands, Tool and Pussifer. He's a really successful musician, obviously. He's got 3 big bands, basically. And in his autobiography, he was talking about, at one point he lived in Boston and he was working at like a pet store, and he had birds, and he had kind of like, he was like, I think he was in art school at the time. And he kept just hearing from tarot readers and his own intuition what felt like this knowing, it was like coming at him from all angles, basically, that he needed to go to California. He needed to go explore his musical talents, which he didn't even really know much about at the time. He didn't know he was this badass front man. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that was his spirit of the depth waking up and disrupting his life. It's time to quit your job. It's time to move. And we're not going to tell you where. We're going to compel you to move based on a feeling, on a sense of destiny, a sense that this is where fate wants to take you. And it's kind of neat to think about, but when you're actually going through it, it's pretty difficult, because there's this battle between the spirit of the depths and the spirit of the times. And a lot of times they see things very differently. But people who have had an awakening have probably gleaned that it's almost futile to ignore that part of you. And maybe you have been right now. Maybe that's why you're watching this video. And I understand. I resisted as long as I possibly could. I held on to that gym into the bitter end. What had to happen for me is life had to start to kind of push me out of the situation. I didn't just go on blind faith. I'll just say that right now. I sensed it was inevitable. And yet, because it seemed so illogical and almost reckless and irresponsible, I stayed at the gym until things got so crazy and bad. There was problems and clients were dropping off. It felt like I got to a point where I literally just had to let go. But I want to talk about this because you might be at that point right now, where the spirit, your spirit of the depths, your soul is wanting you to do something that defies logic and understanding, and maybe even conflicts with your former identity. That was me. I identified as being a fitness trainer. But there was more to me that was trying to express itself. And that's a cool thing. The spirit of your spirit of the depths, it has a lot of wisdom. It has a lot of gifts, a lot of talents. And it's important to use them. In fact, that book I was just referring to, he talked about this. He had this thing he said in the book about one of the reasons he eventually pursued it, what I just said, is because he's met people with abilities that lost them in life. Like, for example, a good dancer who didn't really dance all that much, but could have, and then they lost their legs or something. He somehow saw some version of that. So he knew in his mind, it was not cool to kind of not use your talents while you have them, because at any day they can get taken away. Now, I'm not saying to try to scare you or anything, but it was a good mindset to know. Like, God gave you this spirit of the depth. It wouldn't be coming up if it wasn't something really relevant for you right now and probably very helpful to humanity. And I'm so grateful that I listened to mine, even though kicking and screaming and very reluctantly, because I have had a lot of amazing experiences. I've been able to help a lot of people with this part of myself that I didn't even know existed. And finally, people who've had a spiritual awakening are being guided at this time. You're always finding the exact video, message, whatever book, mentor figure you need at that time. And the cool thing is, even though you'll almost always feel like you're in the unknown, like you don't know, your mind cannot wrap itself around or understand what's happening with you, where you're going to end up, what that's going to look like. But there are other forms of guidance that are coming to you right now and have been coming to you. And if you listen to them, they will show you the way. They might be showing you the way right now, this video. And this is just an example. This doesn't make me special. You're the one who aligned yourself with this particular message out of the billions of videos out there. You're watching this one right here. That's how powerful you are. In fact, one of the things I do on my YouTube channel is I film these energy updates where I talk about the astrology and what people might be going through. And every video, pretty much, people say, "How do you do it? You are so spot on. That is so amazing." And whenever I do respond, I always say that it's not because of me. I just talk about what I'm going through. You're the one watching the video. You're the one who's attracted this message. It happens to come through me, but you're the one with the wizardry going on. And if you're watching this video, this is happening to you right now. It's been happening to you. And I just want to say you're safe to trust it. You're safe to trust it. Another thing that can happen, and often does happen, is the seeker, once awakened, will start to experience life rarely in the middle. You might find yourself oscillating between very high highs, peak experiences, spiritual expansion, exhilaration, and then low, very, very low lows, where you feel completely cut off from anything resembling divine guidance, anything resembling happiness, peace, stability, balance, joy. You're like the opposite. You feel just immersed in tension. You're overly sensitive. You're like an exposed nerve being bombarded by your shadow. At this time, your life is just doing all sorts of bizarre things, problems emerging out of left field at a rate that seems almost laughable. And you wonder, what the heck did you do to deserve this? What happened to this triumphant spiritual experience that just seemed to go away without any real discernible cause? And back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you find yourself swinging. And every time you get back, and you feel connected again, then from here you can kind of see, now I see why I needed to go through that. Now, finally, it makes sense. There were lessons to learn. I needed to grow in this particular area. I needed to become aware of this particular thing in order to make a wise choice to improve it or modify it. I get it. I understand. But then when you get back in it, it's almost like you forget what it's like to be connected. You forget that what happened, even though you know what happened last time. Like, I've been going back and forth for a while. It's so common when you are humbled again, we'll say, by life, and it's time for another contraction healing episode, apparently. Not that you chose it, but here you are. Once this happens, it's very, very difficult to have anything but maybe a foggy memory of what it was like to be connected. And there can be this genuine concern, even though it doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up. You know, if the odds are on your side, you're going to bounce back again, just like you always have. But because it hasn't happened yet, the mind can't help but wonder, maybe this is the time I don't go back. Maybe this time, instead of having some type of learning lesson / upgrade, maybe I just took a wrong turn somewhere and I got to find my way back to the light. And it's just this dance of going back and forth, contraction and expansion. And I've been going through a spiritual awakening for over 20 years. And I wish I could tell you this has stopped for me, that it finally culminates and results in this sort of consistency, stability. It doesn't. At least it hasn't for me. And I think I know why. I think it's because every time I contract, I heal more. I learn more. I discover more about myself. And while it hasn't stopped, I'm not above this. What I can say is experience has given me a new way of going through it, where I've learned how to endure the challenging times without losing as much sleep, without making really many sloppy mistakes I used to make back before I kind of knew, before I got the hang of things. And there's an appreciation for it. What kind of comes to mind is when I was in my early 20s, I was doing these really intense like athletic conditioning workouts. I used to follow this website called Ross Training. Ross was like a trainer of professional combat sport athletes. And they have a very, very ridiculously intense, high intensity way of training where you get your heart rate up to the max and you keep it there. It's very grueling to do these workouts, which were only sometimes 5 or 10 minutes long. It was, you wanted to die. They were really, really intense. And I say this because the more I trained, the better shape I got into. I didn't get to a point where I wouldn't experience that exact level of fatigue. Because what happens is you get in better shape and then you can push yourself harder, and regardless, you're always hitting your edge. You're always hitting that threshold of where you're miserable, basically. But what I found is the more I would do it, the more I realized that the fatigue wasn't as scary as I thought. I learned I can function in this fatigue. I'm exhausted. My heart's pounding. I can't talk. I'm like gasping for breath, doing burpees or doing some kind of crazy, high intensity thing. But my mind is more chill. There's more of a sense of safety, trust, familiarity. And it's so empowering when you realize that, life can get pretty freaking crazy and I can stay cool as a cucumber. And to me, that is more empowering, more satisfying than if it were just to find the end and I get my wish and no more growth. I'm not saying I don't hope for that, but I think I understand why it hasn't happened like that, because I think that's why we're here. I think we're here to experience the polarity. I think we're here to awaken at this time because the polarity is getting quite extreme on planet Earth, more than ever before. This has always been a dualistic reality, but now it's so obnoxious, so in your face. There's such a contrast of different types of lives you can have, quality of human being. There are people who are just really, really, really unconscious, completely taken over by their fearful ego. And then you have people like Eckhart Tolle who are completely enlightened. And there's just this wild dance of polarity that I think we've come to experience. But what's maybe different about you and different about spiritually awakened people is they're learning how to ride the waves. You're learning how to ride the waves, even if you just crashed and burned yesterday. It's okay. I bet if you look back over the last several years, you can see how far you've come. That you can see you're learning from these waves. These contraction periods are making you stronger. They're revealing more of your truth, more of your purpose, more of your light. And it's doing you good. It's doing me good. And I believe that is the difference between people who are spiritually awakened, if nothing else, is you are learning how to use adversity to your advantage for growth and expansion and consciousness elevation. And then regardless of what's happening, it doesn't matter because you're learning from it. All of it is for your growth. All of it is fueling your forward progress. Where so many people, and I can understand why, don't know they're going through an awakening or don't even know that they have the ability to use their obstacles and adversity in a positive way, where you might find yourself doing it, maybe not all the time, but at the end of the day, you find a way to use it in a constructive way. And that's why you are where you are. And that's why you're here waking up now, because maybe you're not here to like tell everybody about it, but maybe you're here just to be an example that it is possible to overcome challenges. Transformation, transcendence is a legitimate option in 2026, and you are living proof. And it's evident not in so much how you look, what you wear, or anything like that. It's in your energy. I bet even when you're having a rough day, relatively speaking, you got a good vibe. You probably have a very pleasant vibe. You might find that people feel safe around you. And it's because they trust your authenticity. Another thing these waves they do, they humble you. They give you almost like a commonsensical conclusion that neither of us have any business judging anybody. Because we know we're carrying some of our own stuff here. And that, what does that create? Real compassion, a genuine acceptance of people, a way less judgment. And it's healing, it's raising your frequency. So the combination of all of this, the humility, the sincerity, the compassion, the empathy, your own growth, your own light emerging and becoming brighter and brighter and brighter. Even on your worst day, you are a light in this world. And my hope is that this video gave you a way where you can embrace it, all of it. The crazy ass stuff that's been happening to you that maybe you didn't understand, the challenges. Maybe you can start listening, trusting that synchronicity, trusting your own God-given intuition, if nothing else, and really owning what you are.